Hi class, now let's talk about chapter 10. That's beginning and ending the speech. So we talked about the body. Now we're going to talk about the beginning and the ending. You want to think of a speech kind of like a hamburger. You have to have a really good beginning, body, and ending for a good speech. If you have a weak beginning, then that's setting up for a bad body and ending. You can have a really good beginning, really good body, but with a really bad conclusion, same thing. It's not going to make for a very good speech. So let's go ahead and talk about these two. The beginning or introduction prepares listeners for what is to come. The conclusion ties up the speech and alerts listeners that the speech is going to end. The introduction. First impressions are very important. In most speech situations, the introduction has 4 objectives or goals. It's to get the attention and interest of your audience, to reveal the topic of your speech, establish your credibility and goodwill, and preview the body of the speech. So number 1, how do you get attention and the interest of the audience? A speaker can quickly lose an audience if they do not use the introduction to get their attention and quicken their interest. We're going to discuss some methods to be employed individually or in combination that will help the audience get caught up in your speech. First one is relate the topic to the audience. State the importance of your topic speech. Startle the audience. Arouse the curiosity of the audience. Question the audience. Begin with a quotation. Tell a story. Use visual aids. How to relate the topic to the audience. People pay attention to things that affect them directly. If you can relate the topic to them, they are more likely to be interested in it. You can introduce the topic in general terms that might be a major issue, but a better way is to introduce it in a way that relates to it as a problem to the audience directly or to someone close to them, such as family. State the importance of your topic. Tell your audience why they should think the topic is important. Let's look at this example. Climate change is moving faster than we are. Atmospheric levels of carbon dioxide are higher than they have ever been for 800,000 years. The past 5 years have been the hottest period on record. We are in a war for the very existence of life on our planet as we know it. If you'll notice, this example puts climate change in a way that the audience understands the importance directly to them. Startle the audience. You can startle them with an arresting or intriguing statement. You can add a build-up to the statement, drive the topic home at a personal level. Be sure that the startling introduction relates directly to the subject of your speech. Here's an example. Take a moment and think of the 3 women closest to you. Who come in mind? Your mother, your sister, your girlfriend, your wife, your best friend? Now guess which one will be sexually assaulted during her lifetime? It's not a pleasant thought, but according to the U.S. Department of Justice, 1 of every 3 American women will be sexually assaulted sometime during their lifetime. So with this example, it relates it directly to the audience where they can say, hey, that could be me or somebody close to me. And with that statistic or that fact, it really startles the audience. Arouse the curiosity of the audience. People are curious. One way to draw them into your speech is with a series of statements that will progressively spark their curiosity about the subject of the speech. Let's look at this example. This past month, more than 1 billion people around the world skipped lunch every day. They ate no food of any kind and drank no liquid of any kind from sunup to sunset. They did this every day during the month, and they do this the same every year. I myself did it. Why? Last month was a time for tending to the mind, the body, and the spirit. Last month was the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. See how this student was able to build suspense and pull the audience into her speech? Now think just how boring it would have been if she would have just started her speech by simply stating, today I'm going to talk about Ramadan. Question the audience. Ask rhetorical questions. This is another way to get your listeners to think about your speech. Rhetorical questions are questions that the audience answers mentally, not aloud. You can also pose a series of questions, each drawing the audience deeper into your speech. When using this technique, be sure to pause for just a moment after each question. This adds dramatic impact and gives the question time to sink in. Here's an example. Have you ever felt stressed out about essays or exams? Do you have trouble sleeping, especially when those big projects come due? Would you like to be healthier and happier at home, at school, at work? If so, it might be time for you to begin meditating. Academic research has recently confirmed that practitioners have known for thousands of years regular meditation can improve physical, emotional, and mental health. You'll also notice the use of you to address the questions to the audience directly. Begin with a quotation. You can start your speech with an attention-getting quotation. Quotation should be relatively short. Effective quotations related to your topic can be from well-known people or not so famous people. Here's an example of a famous person. Pablo Picasso once said, "Every child is an artist. The problem is staying an artist when you grow up." Today, we will discuss the various reasons why we lose our creativity and replace it with logic as we age. Now, here's an example of someone not so famous. His last words were to the crisis hotline. "Why couldn't you help me? Why couldn't anyone help me?" This statement was made by the grandmother of Zachary Ferguson as she shared her experience of losing her grandson, an Iraq War veteran, to suicide. So even though this isn't somebody famous, it's still something very relevant to the topic and that would get the interest of the audience. Tell a story. We all enjoy a good story, especially if they are provocative, dramatic, or suspenseful. Stories can be well-known events or public figures. They can also be based on our personal experience. The effectiveness of the story hinges on the delivery as well as the content. Use visual aids. Visual aids are often found in the body of the speech, but they can also be used in the introduction. They are most effective when they provide images that enhance the impact of your words. Keep in mind that they are effective only when they're used strategically, relate directly to the speech topic, and are in good taste. Here's an example. A speech on the dangers of illegally manufactured drugs with counterfeit ingredients that can cause serious harm or even death. The speaker's open remarks to the topic is by showing images of 3 sets of pills. Each look identical, but in fact are far from identical, as she explained. Take a look at these 2 pills. Do you notice a difference between them? How about these 2? Do you see a difference here? How about these? To the naked eye, these pills look alike, but at a chemical level, they are very, very different. The pill on the left is real. It will help you get better. The pill on the right is counterfeit. It will not help you get better, and in some cases, it may even kill you. So that was number 1 goal of the introduction, get the attention. We talked about some methods. Now let's talk about the number 2 goal of introduction, to reveal the topic of your speech. So in the process of gaining attention, be sure to state clearly what the topic is of your speech. You want to make sure in your introduction that you get their attention and that you state your topic clearly and precisely at some point in your introduction. Number 3, establish credibility and goodwill. In the introduction, you also want to establish these 2. It is mostly a matter of showing that you are qualified to speak on the topic. Your credibility does not have to be from firsthand knowledge or experience. It can be from reading, from classes, from interviews, from friends, and so on. Whatever the source is of your expertise, you must let the audience know. For example, I have been interested in the myth of Atlantis for several years, and I have read a number of books and articles about it. In this example, the way that they establish credibility is by stating how long and that the fact they've been reading books and articles about that topic. Now, goodwill is slightly different in a challenge. You have to be clear of your intentions and be reasonable in your expectations of the audience. They will see that you have their best interests at heart. This is vital in speeches, causes that arouse hostility among listeners, or when advocating a potentially unpopular position. The 4th goal of the introduction, preview the body of the speech. Most people are poor listeners. So in the introduction, you need to help them by telling them what they should listen for in the rest of the speech. After your introduction, there should be no doubt about your topic or the main points that you will cover. Because previous statements usually come at the end of the introduction, they also serve as a smooth lead-in to the body of the speech. They signal that the body of the speech is about to begin. You can also use this time of your speech to give special information like definitions if you're doing a topic that has lots of technical terms, or background that your listeners will need to understand the rest of your speech. Here are some tips for introduction. It should not be more than 10 to 20% of your speech. You want to be creative in devising your introduction. Experiment with 2 or 3 different openings and choose the one that seems most likely to get the audience interested. Work out your introduction in detail. It can be word for word or outline, but practice it over and over until you can deliver it smoothly from a minimum of notes and with strong eye contact. When you present, don't start talking right away. You want to make sure that the audience has quieted down and is focused on you before you begin. Establish eye contact, smile, and then start your opening words. That was the introduction. Now let's talk about the conclusion of your speech. Your closing remarks are the last chance to drive home your ideas. Your final impression will probably linger in your listeners' minds. Therefore, you need to craft your conclusion with as much care as your introduction. Conclusions have 2 major functions. The first is to let the audience know that you are wrapping it up, you're ending your speech. And the second is to enforce the audience's understanding of or their commitment to what your central idea is. This is what you stated in your introduction. First, signaling the end of the speech. If you just kind of are coming to the close of your body of the speech, and then you just say, in conclusion, this is why I think, and you state what you claimed. That's just too sudden of an ending. It leaves the audience puzzled and unfulfilled. So you want to make sure that your conclusion is fully developed. Let your audience know that you are ending in what you say. In conclusion, to summarize, those are some examples. My purpose has been, let me end by saying. These are all brief cues that you are getting ready to stop. You can also let your audience know the end is in sight by your manner of delivery. You can use your voice to show the conclusion, climax of the speech, its tone, pacing, intonation, and rhythm. It can also be with your vocal pitch, choice of words, dramatic content, gestures, pauses, and even possibly loudness. There are 2 ways that you can end a speech. One is crescendo ending, and that is a conclusion in which the speech builds to a zenith of power and intensity. So a good example of this would be Martin Luther King's I've Been to the Mountaintop, where it starts very calm, but as he's getting to the end, he just gets louder, more passionate. And then you have the opposite, dissolve ending, a conclusion that generates emotional appeal by fading steps by steps to a dramatic final statement. A good example of this is the farm story, and that is on page 190 of your book. Both of these require a good amount of practice and worked out with great care, but the benefits will be well worth your time. The second goal of the conclusion, reinforcing the central idea. There are many ways of doing this. Summarize your speech by restating what those main points were that you covered, and with a quotation that perfectly captures your central idea. Make a dramatic statement. One student referred to a friend who had tried to commit suicide in the previous year. In the conclusion, she said, "My friend is back in school, participating in new activities and enjoying life. I am happy to say that she's still fighting for her life and even happier that she failed to kill herself. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today trying to help you. You see, I am my friend, and I'm more than glad to say I've made it." This dramatic statement in the end stunned the audience, that the whole time that she was talking about her friend, she was actually talking about herself. Refer to the introduction. So if you start your introduction with an example or a story, you can then use your conclusion to refer back to that example and tie your whole speech together by returning to the story described in your introduction. You can use a combination of all these methods. You can use a dramatic quote that summarizes the central idea while referring to the introduction. Here's some tips for your conclusion. Conclude with a bang, not a whimper. Be creative in devising a conclusion that hits the hearts and minds of your audience. Work on several possible endings and select the one that seems likely to have the greatest impact. Don't be long-winded. The conclusion will normally make up no more than 5 to 10% of your speech. Don't leave anything in your conclusion to chance. Work it out in detail and give yourself plenty of time to practice delivering it. Make sure you can present it smoothly, confidently, and with feeling. Make your last impression as forceful and as favorable as you can. That is it for chapter 10. I hope this really helped you out to understand how to develop your introduction and your conclusion to your speech.